Welcome to the Grow As We Go podcast. I'm Sam, breathwork and embodiment coach, muse, and self-growth junkie.
And I'm Anthony, your co-host, transformational men's coach, and general question asker.
Here we create space for natural, vulnerable, and deeply connecting conversations on life as it happens, wisdom that I've picked up along the way, and tools to truly enjoy this beautiful life you've been given. I want to appreciate you for being here, whether this is your first time or you've been here since the beginning. We love feedback here, so leave your thoughts and takeaways from this episode in the reviews section of this podcast. This also helps the podcast become a bit more relevant in search reviews. Another way you can support this podcast is by following me on Instagram at Samantha__Charles and take a screenshot of this episode to share it on your social media and share your takeaways so that your junkie friends can come and get their fix too. Hello and welcome to another episode of Grow As We Go. I'm Sam. Today I have Anthony and Sunil with us. And we're going to do the Storytime series. So this is our second episode. Well, not a second episode, but second journey on this Storytime
That's right. Yeah.
series. I don't know. It feels a little complicated.
We first did a story time with Diane, and then we get to do story time with Sunil. So hello, Sunil.
Yeah. So this one might look different. We don't really have we have a framework and we just grow as we go. So
awesome. Hi guys. I'm honored to be here and I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah.
No expectations.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you. Neither do we. So hooray.
Well, we thought that we would start out just by diving deep into it. The theme of this whole thing is sharing challenges that we go through as regular humans. Every day, everyone's got something, and it's really interesting to share lessons and, the growth and the lessons that are available through story. And they've been around for millennia, and it's what has allowed us to evolve as a species as well, and learn and learn. So what have been your greatest challenges thus far?
In life?
Yeah. There's the first, what's the first one that comes to mind?
First thing that comes to mind is fitting in, just like this, even as from as young as I can remember, just like a deep, innate want and struggle to fit in. So, I'll give you guys a little bit of background. I'm obviously, I'm Indian heritage. I was born in Malaysia. I, schooled in Malaysia until I was about 6 years old. Then my parents immigrated to Australia. I grew up in Australia. I've had the opportunity to live, in a few places around the world, but then, eventually my journey brought me here to the US. And I guess, if I take it right back to childhood, it was just like a struggle to fit in. The first thing that comes to mind is, just being, a young kid in school. I was maybe one of two, maybe three colored kids in school. We're talking early 90s, showing my age a little bit there, but yeah. I looked different. I sounded different. Everything about me was different. And I just, I really, really struggled to fit in as a kid. Australia has progressed a lot as a culture since then. It's very diverse, very multicultural, but at that point in time, not so much. So someone like me really stuck out. Kids being kids, they weren't maybe the most welcoming And it was, you know, it was a real challenge to fit in.
Sure.
And, you know, I think that shaped my identity into my teenage years, because it was just this constant, like, who am I? Like, because I was just constantly shaping myself into what was popular, or
Right.
what I could be to be accepted by people. And yeah, that common theme, you know, followed all through my adolescent years, teenage years, probably into young adulthood, you know, and you know, probably wasn't until my sort of early 20s where I was, you know, kind of started to discover who I was, because, you know, it was like I'd worn this mask for so long to fit in to my surroundings, that, you know, along the way I lost myself. I kind of forgot who I was.
Yeah, for sure.
You weren't made to be a chameleon, but that's how you end up finding yourself.
Yeah. Yep.
What was the moment, one of the moments maybe, or a slow series of moments that you realized, like, oh, that's what I've been doing. Oh, I see it now. Like, kind of an aha there.
I don't know if there's one sort of moment in time. It's like an onion that, you know, we're peeling back the layers, because, you know, it might be one, you know, sort of one point in time when you're like, oh, I do or I say I like that, or I say that I like to do A, because, you know, I'll pick a very simple example. When I was, you know, probably 5th, 6th grade, the friends I was around, they were into trucks. They loved trucks and drawing trucks. And so that became my favorite thing to do. Like, sit down together and draw trucks and color in trucks, and then compare. And I don't know if I really did, like, you know, it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if that really was my interest, because it was mine, or I was just faking it. I was just pretending it. But then it just became like part of me, that, oh yeah, this is something I like. I'm giving a very sort of simplistic example there, but the theme is common, I think. And so then, you know, you have I had moments, you know, into my 20s and 30s where you kind of I had, you know, sort of realizations here and there of like, oh, do I actually like this, or is this actually who I am? So then it's like, okay, you peel back that layer, and then it's like, okay, maybe that was who I was, but that's not who I am now. And then, so I don't think there was a moment in time, but more an evolution and a journey of just like peeling back layers and going, oh, okay, that's not me. Why do I do that?
Sure. Yeah.
Why do I do that just to entertain people, or why do I do that just to? Am I doing that just to fit in, or be cool, or be accepted? And I started to ask myself these questions too. Now, another example is I gave up drinking alcohol when I it's probably 9 years now. And that another example of like, was I just doing that to fit in, to be cool, to be social? And I think, you know, I probably realized maybe even a year, maybe even 2 years before I quit, that it wasn't for me. Like, physically, the alcohol wasn't agreeing with my body. My body was like rejecting it for days after like a night out or anything or something like that. And I just knew, like, I don't want this. Like,
Mm.
I don't know if this is something I like, but there was a fear of, oh, if I stop drinking, then when I go out with my friends, then it'll be weird because everyone else will be socializing and having a good time. I'll be like, I'll be on the outside again.
Mm.
And so there was a fear of that for, probably a good year, until I was just like, well, I'm just putting too much pressure on myself. Like it was this like analysis paralysis of like, oh, do I want to do this? Or, what if, or, all the what ifs and all the fears. And I was like, well, eventually I just took the pressure off myself and I was like, well, it's going to be an experiment.
Yeah.
I'm just going to try it. And if it doesn't work, if I don't like it, well, then I'll go back. And it stuck. And that was like another layer that I peeled away. That was like, okay, that's not me.
Mm.
Yeah. Like slowly learning again who you are. Right. And I think that that's a constant journey for a lot of people too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got fitting in. All right. Do you have other questions, Anthony?
I mean, I always have a million questions.
Yeah.
But
I think what we were planning on doing is like getting 2 to 3 challenges that you feel like were really big in your life.
Yeah.
And then kind of see how it goes from there.
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, yeah. So the fitting in one is big.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems like a theme for, like it set the tone. I mean, whenever stuff like that happens really early, it like sets the tone for a lot of the challenges that we face.
Yeah. And I think, look, we all suffer from the same.
There's like 5 core ones,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm no different. Speaking up and making my voice heard was something that was big for me, particularly in the family dynamic.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that I've only sort of really feel like I'm on the other side of very recently after ALA.
Wow.
But yeah, so that like just being heard, self-belief, self-love, all the blocks, all the challenges that everyone, that's the common thread of humanity, of the human experience, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like a specific memory? I know you said that it was like in the family dynamic of voice not being heard or feeling unheard or not able to use your voice.
Yeah.
Is there like a specific memory around that?
Ooh. There's not one that jumps out, but I think coming from a cultural upbringing, I think there tends to be a more subservient relation, parent-child dynamic. And, I fell into that very much of like, there's no such thing as like voicing opinion because there's like this weird, am I voicing my opinion or am I talking back? And sometimes I think, the times that I did voice my opinion, it was misconstrued or misunderstood as talking back. And so it wasn't received. So, I was kind of like reprimanded, disciplined for that. Which kind of like made me go even smaller, right? Because it's like, oh, I tested the waters and that didn't go down well, right? So I think that's kind of what I meant by the family dynamic and kind of like just this fear of, I think part of it was just not knowing who I am or who I was and the like sort of confidence in self. But it's also that not wanting to upset my parents or not wanting to, rock the boat.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I have I've noticed that, I obviously noticed that with my sister. So I have a brother and a sister, and my sister, we kind of are a lot more similar in the way we grew up. We were obedient and we listened to what our parents said. And, if our parents wanted us to do A, we didn't, we might have said, oh, well, I really want to do B, but in the end we went with A. But interestingly enough, my brother was the opposite. He pushed back hard on a lot of things.
Defiant almost.
Yes.
On purpose, just to be.
Yeah. And he did bear the brunt of, or he there were consequences for him too, but
of course
he didn't pull away from it. He wasn't as fearful maybe as I was, or as my sister was. So that's kind of what I meant by the the kind of the family dynamic, and that probably led to kind of just holding things in a lot and not voicing my opinions, not voicing my true emotions, how I felt about just even everyday situations.
Sure.
And again, that's something that carried through, again, similarly with the other example of I guess fitting in. This also kind of carried through adolescence, teenage years, young adulthood, in friendships, love relationships, just not being open, honest, not, kind of like a fear of, well, if I voice my emotions rather, then there might be negative sort of feedback and repercussions.
Yeah.
So I think that's another
theme.
Another theme, yeah.
You're good at finding those,
I've reflected on these things.
You don't say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
The threads we weave.
Yeah.
So there's challenges, right, that we see that happen in our past.
Yeah.
And when we think about kind of the big ones, there's the difference between there's those overarching, right? Like this is the challenge that I've had throughout the whole entire thing. And then there's, a 30,000 foot view, right? Is there somewhere you feel like there was a challenge that, like, in that moment, it was very difficult to see outside of the big picture of things?
Yeah, lots.
One more, maybe more recent, not necessarily like right now, but like within the past couple of years. I love that sigh. It's my favorite. I hear it from Sam all the time too, and I'm like, what's going on in there?
Well, okay. So I'll give you a recent example, and actually just remind me of the question again, because I don't want to go off topic. Because
sure, it's okay.
I can talk.
You know that Sam is our host, right? Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
So there's you're looking at these. Yeah. You have these themes that are kind of overarching, and they are like 30,000 feet in the air, and like these are the problems overall, right? Is there one that this kind of more you feel like is nitty gritty, I guess, for lack of a better word, one that doesn't have that overarching feel quite yet?
Well, I mean, I guess along the same lines of, and by all means, stop me if I'm not answering the question. It will redirect me.
You got it. You 100% got that.
Yeah. Along the lines of the fitting in theme, and this is something that even up until recently, I noticed. I probably really noticed and started to shift something specific within that sort of broad umbrella of like fitting in. And it was a thing of, I came to the realization that I tend to keep my friend groups separate. So it's like I have when I moved here here to New York, I had a bunch of friends that I knew from Australia, and I would like do separate things with them. And then I had, like a circle of friends that I'd met through my housemate. And then I had some work friends, or some people I met through community or whatever. And I would always do things with them separately, like individually.
Mm.
And actually it was something that I noticed in some people around me, so some friends, my housemates, I noticed that they intermingled their friend groups a lot. And I was actually having a conversation with my roommate one day, and he was like, well, and he is a master at bringing people together. That's his gift, is he brings people together. He hosts a lot of dinners. He's very, very, very social person. And he's amazing at bringing people together. And so his theory is, well, all these people are your friends and they connect with you because, right, that's the common thread is you, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a good chance that, they'll have things, they'll have things in common, or they'll get along as well.
Sure.
And so then that made me think, like, why have I always done this? Like, why? Because I noticed that this is not a new thing. I've always done this. I've kept my friend groups separate.
Right.
And I came to the realization that I did this because I was afraid of losing friends. So in my mind, I thought, well, I had this train of thought that was like, well, if I start to intermingle these friend groups, maybe they'll like get on really well and they'll like each other more than they like me. And then I'll lose them. That was the story that was in my head.
Sure.
And I don't know if that sounds ridiculous to you, but it now sounds ridiculous. But the funny thing is,
relatable.
It sounds ridiculous to me now.
Yeah,
sure.
But this was a very concrete, tangible fear at the time. And again, it kind of, so this is a recent example of a fear that started from childhood, where I didn't have a lot of friends because I was different, and I really struggled to keep friends. I had to maneuver the world and be a chameleon to kind of keep these friends. And there were some traumatic experiences where I lost friends or whatever, or they decided that they didn't want to associate with me for whatever reason or whatever, and I lost friends, and that was a traumatic experience from childhood. That was like, now it was like that seed was still there. And I finally said to myself that, okay, I get that there's this fear here, but it was like my roommate's words ringing in my ears, like, well, maybe they'll, like, you are the common thread that sort of connects all these different people. And maybe, by bringing these groups of people together, like, there'll be, more beautiful friendships formed. And so then I kind of like, okay, well, so maybe I'm like standing in the way of like something really great, something really positive by living in this fear. I was kind of like standing in the way of something really positive, not just for my friend groups, but potentially for myself too.
Right.
And then I just decided, well, I'm going to start mixing friend groups.
Yeah.
And what do you know? It turned out just
of course it did.
What do you know? It turned out just great. And that story in my head was untrue. Right. But it's a process. It's a process because after I started to integrate and introduce these friend groups, some of them really did get along really well, and they had sort of common interests, sort of like great, sort of deep common interests. Let's say art and museums, for example, that maybe like I like to do, but they're not like a real sort of passion.
Sure.
So I had, sort of mixed these friend groups. They found sort of strong commonality and were building friendship over that strong commonality. And then they would do things, they would kind of like get together and do things. And so why I say that, and why I say it's a journey. It's constantly an evolving process, is because that triggered me initially.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
you're my friend.
Yeah. Well, the thought that came was like, oh, I introduced these friends, and now they're doing stuff without me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, yeah. So it was like, oh, okay. Are my fears like being realized? My fears of like, oh, I'm going to lose these friends. Are they being like, what's going on here? Is that, are they, was I right all along?
Well, I think that's an interesting point too, of how we like live in these stories in our heads and they become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And also,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. I just also think that like with that, the story that we have in our head, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's such a like playground for us to have an opportunity to heal. It's like, it's so, this is like, I go off about the magnificence of the brain and our, beyond the five senses ability and magic that's within us. And so part of what I share with my breathwork stuff, and I don't know if I've said this like 100 times, but at this point on the podcast, but just about like how the body's capability to heal, like whenever we scrape our shoulder or knee or whatever in our immune system, it's like, that's the mental aspect at work. Yeah. Exactly what you're talking about. So it's beautiful. If you can see it that way,
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see it that way initially. Like it was, I mean, the immediate reaction is like fear of like, oh, what's going on? Like, but
like whenever you fall down and scrape your knee, you're not like, oh, this is awesome. My body's going to heal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What you feel immediately is the pain.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, but I think like I said, this was a more sort of recent last 4 or 5 year type event. So I guess I was lucky enough to have been far enough along on my journey where I was able to kind of step back and just really think about, okay, what is this? And I'm a believer that life teaches us. We're constantly learning, and life has a funny way to teach us. And sometimes on one day our parent is our teacher, and one day our kid is our teacher, and one day it's a friend, and one day it's a stone on the ground or a leaf. Lessons and teachers come in all shapes and sizes and forms.
Absolutely.
So I was like, okay, let me take a step back and reflect on what is the universe trying to teach me here? Because I also believe what you resist persists.
Yeah.
And it was like, this was obviously, it's like, it's a common theme for a reason. I was constantly being given these tests for a reason, because I was failing them previously. So what you resist persists.
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of like take a step back and go, okay, what does the universe want me to learn here?
And what is the end result, or not the end result, I suppose, but like, what's in summation, I suppose that best, that lesson that you take away from that particular experience?
I mean, big picture was that, you know, that my value doesn't come from the friends the friends I have, or like it comes from within.
Yeah.
And I had to, what I learned from that experience was to really just become comfortable in myself, love myself, and trust myself that, I was making these micro events like friend A and friend B that I introduced are now doing some activity that I'm not part of. And I made that a referendum on my likability.
Ooh.
When it was completely not. And I was like, this is a bogus story.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
I made it a referendum on my likability and my ability to fit in, or whatever, or my worth in society, or my worth to my friend group, when it wasn't that at all.
Right.
My worth comes from within, from who I am.
Well, and if you're moving from this space of like, okay, my friends in this particular group are my friends because I have adapted to that group of friends. And then there's also there, as you say, like, okay, I get to learn to trust myself, right? You also get to hold space for the fact that you chose to go through elements of identity loss.
Yeah.
Because like
absolutely.
You had friends in each of you had friends in different groups. And because of your, consistency in trying to fit in, you were a different person to a certain extent in each of those friend groups. And so there was also this fear of like, maybe subconscious, maybe conscious, I'm not sure, but like, I have to blend myself just as much as I have to blend my friend groups.
Absolutely. And there was a part of the fear was, as you said, I might be one person in this friend group and another person in another friend group. And do I have to blend that now? And are they going to find out that I'm a fraud?
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
And that's because, of course, it's not like we go into those relationships thinking that, because we just want to be friends with people.
Yeah.
And like, I hear you, like, on a spiritual level, I hear you, right? Like, I'm a Gemini. Being a chameleon has been in my blood for literally my entire existence. Right. And so I can play so many roles that what happens is people give me a lot of feedback that I'm a performer. And so it sounds like you have the ability to also play multiple roles and wear multiple hats and be friends with literally anyone.
Yeah. I became really good at it. I became really good at it.
Yeah. And I wonder what it's like now. Is it different to make friends out of this like sense of authenticity and authentic self?
It's liberating. It's freeing. It's liberating. It's light.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you felt that, like, that sense of liberation, and when that experience was made alive in you, do you remember feeling a shift? And if you did feel that shift, like, where was that in your body?
Yeah, I mean the physical sort of sensation in my body was definitely like heart center and in the gut. And I think was there what, again, I don't know if I can pick out one.
Of course, there never
one
is.
sort of experience. Yeah, it's a journey for a reason, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think, even as recently as ALA, it was a big part of that journey too.
Of course.
Yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question there.
You do. You're
okay.
answering wonderfully. There's never a wrong answer. And if I need to clarify, I will and say something like, life isn't defined by an individual moment of saying, okay, this is the be all end all, and like nothing will ever top that, right? It's the experience of being able to say the imperceptible moments and changes and shifts in my life and in my identity have led me to the place that I am right now. And so when I'm hearing you say like that you've had, those experiences of life that have happened to you, and that during those experiences, you've been able to step back and say, okay, where is that? Like, when did you realize you had that gift over time? Because like man, that's incredible.
Well, I think, like I was saying earlier, like life is the ultimate teacher.
Yeah.
And, I started to see a pattern of like things happening, and I started to question, like, why do these things keep coming up? Like, why are these things happening to me? Like this sort of same or similar things over and over. And I think, lucky. I feel I'm grateful and I'm blessed that at some point I had the kind of emotional intelligence and insight to go, well, maybe I'm the common thread. Like these things are happening to me because of me. So let me take a step back and look inside.
Yeah. I just want to honor you in that.
Thank you.
You are not typical in that sense.
Oh, thank you.
Like there are not a lot of people who choose to say that, like through whatever experiences that they've had.
And it's, I get it. Looking inside is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
Looking inside and going to the deepest, darkest recesses of our psyche and of our ego is the hardest thing to do, which is why people don't do it.
Yeah,
because it's the most uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And
because you start to realize, like, it's me. Hi.
It's me.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to blame everybody else and yada yada. It's like, I actually, but it's also like, again, the most empowering thing too, in a way, because it's like, I'm the problem. Like, okay, I can shift.
I can fix it.
Exactly. Like, what a blessing.
Unbelievable.
I'm curious because we had talked about before you came here about asking about a current issue, if you feel comfortable sharing, or if you want to use mock names, or I don't know if that makes sense for you at this point. If there's a current thing that you're
wading through,
Yeah.
As the children in my class say, spill the tea, Sunil.
Spill the tea. I don't know if there's like a real struggle or a real challenge that I'm working through. I would say being in a relationship is something that is like recent and something that's kind of new too. So I've been with my girlfriend now for 8 months, going on 9 months, and prior to this relationship, I dated a lot, but I haven't really been in a relationship for maybe over 10 years.
Wow.
And I obviously dated a lot. But, it would get to that 5-6 months sort of time frame. And then I would put up all the walls and all the barriers and all the blocks and hold them at arm's length. Again, maybe because there was a fear of maybe they're going to find out I'm a fraud, and not this persona that I put out. And that I'm not gonna be able to keep up the charade of wearing this mask. And I would come up with every excuse under the sun to end said relationship.
Sure.
Yeah. We're not on the same wavelength, or we want different things in life, or whatever it was.
We're incompatible.
Whatever it was, or whatever it needed to be to get you the hell out of there.
When I was 17, I said, because God told me to. Like, what? Come on, man.
So yeah, this is being in a relationship that is safe, secure, loving, open, communicative is a different experience. It's a beautiful experience. But yeah, I don't know if that doesn't really answer
it's perfect.
Your question of challenge. But
well, I guess, is there like a little thing in the relationship that you have found challenging? Like, for example, I can share something that I have recently found out, that it's like challenging for me to accept certain levels of love. Does that make sense when I say that?
Yeah, yes, it does. And for me, I guess being in that pattern of over 10 years, basically being a commitment phobe, and whenever things were getting serious, holding them back at arm's length, it's been a journey to kind of just be so open to just like allow love in, and to give love freely, and to, I guess, witness the progression of the relationship getting more serious and more committed. And there's these micro moments of like, oh shit, this is like, we might do something like go away for the weekend or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of serious. Or like, I met her grandmother and her mum earlier in the year when they came to visit. And I was like, oh shit, like I haven't done this before. Like, I may have done it once or twice before, where I've like met my partner's parents, right? So there are these micro moments of like fear, where like, shit, this is getting serious.
Yeah.
But I have luckily had the insight and the foresight to just be able to step back and go, okay, this is just conditioning. This is just,
and it's like you said before too, like the onion just keeps getting deeper and deeper, and it's kind of the same theme, but like from a different angle, from a different aspect. And you're like, oh God, here we are again, but it's just, and it's interesting to get to a place in like your emotional intelligence or your self-growth journey or whatever you want to call it, where you can see it pretty quickly, and it doesn't start running things, but it's still like, is kind of to like move through it.
And the relationship is a perfect mirror. Because it's like, oh, all of my shit is staring me right in the face right now as I'm loving or being loved by this person. Because like, where are the parts of me that have conformed to a certain level of, I don't need this level of challenge, thank you very much, I can give that to myself, and I can be for myself whatever I need to be. Like, don't make me show you the parts of me I don't like.
So there's definitely been those moments of like, oh, this is serious, or like, what can I think of now that why this wouldn't work or whatever.
Wow. Yeah.
But I just I've been able to go.
Gotta have that backdoor trap ready to go.
It's like trying to find a back door for myself when this has been the most amazing like relationship and the easiest that I've ever had. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Why am I trying to find a back door?
Yeah.
And it's just that stepping back and going, okay, this is conditioning. That's all it is. I get to rewire that.
Right. And if that conditioning, like you said, there's that theme that we've throughout your whole life of, man, I've really gotta fit in here. And as soon as there's that twinge of like, do I fit in with this person? That instantaneously there's that, the inner stuff that comes up. That's like, oh crap, if I'm not gonna fit in, then I'm going to make sure that like I expunge myself from the situation so that I never have to face that fear again.
Yeah.
Like,
when I wonder if it's like to leave before you get left.
Or before you feel like you're not, not.
Yeah.
Before you leave, like you have to reveal some part of yourself you don't want to reveal.
Yeah. Which is because I was thinking earlier, like in the earlier conversation of like the fear of losing your friends with all that. And it's like, well, I'm out of here, I'm not going to give you that chance.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's so impressive that you have that wherewithal though, to like, because one of the things that we do with the story sessions is I'm a story weaver. And what that means is that like there are threads that weave through everybody's narratives throughout the whole entire process and experience. And some people are really cognizant of those. Yeah. And some people, it doesn't like it's not all connected yet. Right. But like it's very clear.
Did I do your job for you or
perfectly? It's amazing. Like so you brought that thread in everything in every way. Right? Like you know your story. And a lot of people don't know their story. But right, there are still elements there that can be new and can be fresh. And you can be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I had that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I know I'm far from the finished product, right? There's always more.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there is such a thing.
There's always more layers to peel back.
Yes, exactly. And so, as you've woven that thread throughout your narrative, right, you see how that touches every aspect of your life.
Yes.
And how that fear touches every aspect of your life. And, there's also like along with that fear, in almost every element of fear, right, there's also this piece of like, what am I trying to escape from? And so if you think about like, okay, your friendship experiences, your relationship experiences, and even like a long stint of dating where like they're short relationships, right? Yeah. There is that like, okay, how do I escape the vulnerability of intimacy?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's really like, once you get into all those different pieces like coming together, it's like, oh, someone's going to see this.
Yes.
And when they see that there is an element of mask there, then they're going to want to see what's behind and under.
Right.
So
that's so
I
true.
understand that though. I mean, like, oof. So the reason I can see so many threads in people's stories is because oftentimes I've had that thread weave through my own life too. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Just a thought.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. I definitely think that's true.
Cool. Sam's she's like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I just pay attention.
Gift. It's a gift.
Yeah. When I think too, it's just interesting to translate it back to like how people could implement this story into their own story or recognize pieces and that being like, the lessons, right? And I think that a lesson to me here is like to like look within, like the answers are always within, and like you just keep digging and get another shovel and like keep digging. Even if you're tired, Grandpa, okay? Like,
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
Yeah. I think the key is to do it in manageable chunks or cycles, right?
Sure.
It's cycles and seasons. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Because it can be really overwhelming.
Yeah.
Processing unprocessed trauma it's a lot. It takes time.
It's huge. And there is that element where you say like, yes, I can step back and I can like do the work and see, okay, this is me. And there's portions of which you step back and you're like, man, the hardest part is like inviting someone else in this process too. So
I think that we grow the most in relationship, or if you're like trying to start a business on your own, where you're like your own whatever. It's like those are the two most triggering fucking things you can do in your life. So if you want to figure out, you know, where your problems are, your triggers are, do one of those two things, or both. Who knows? May get crazy.
Right. So
that's definitely interesting too. I just had a moment of like realization about something else too, because you know that whole thing about fitting in, and I think I just had a realization that
please share.
So now it's like that theme of fitting in is still there, because it's like, but now like how do I fit in, or do I fit in as a partnership, as a couple, right? And it's like, you know, all sorts of things come to my head, like we're an interracial couple, there's an age gap, like how will these things be perceived by my family, my friends, like do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Oh, perceptions. I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's an episode on that coming up. So
it was just an interesting thought that I had, because it's like now
you get to navigate the fitting in as
a partnership, as two, as a that
story within you. And it'd be interesting if she has similar stories too. And maybe how that all fits together, you know, like
how perfect. What a fun journey, Sunil.
Life is great.
It is
beautiful. And so it continues.
Thank you for being willing and vulnerable to share your story and to let us in.
Thank you guys. Like, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. Like, you know, I said, you know, this is stuff I've obviously thought about, reflected on, talked about as well. But, you know, every time for me, like I respond and I do well with sort of like talk therapy. Like I talk, you know,
like a verbal processor.
Yes, I'm a verbal.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
and Maddie, my girlfriend, she processes by writing, completely the opposite. But yeah, I'm definitely a verbal processor. So every time I get the opportunity to talk with someone, with people about my experience, about my journey, it you know, it helps heal.
For sure.
That
and like
cycle
buttons
of
it up and
and it's like I get a little nugget of like, oh, here I realized that I didn't know before, or maybe it might just be the smallest thing, but it's like every time I get something out of this as well. So I just wanted to thank you guys, because I got something out of this
awesome.
So thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, because I would go home and I'd end this and be like, oh God, the stories that I create, you know.
Like it's an exchange, right? Like I think we all got something out of the out of the discussion.
Absolutely.
That's the goal, right? That's how we all grow as we go.
I see what you did there. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. If you found parts of this podcast interesting, useful, or at the very least entertaining, I hope that you'll share your takeaways and tag me on social media, or leave a review. And we appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.